is the new currency, right? Workforce really is product number one when it comes to what we're offering or selling or trying to use as an asset to encourage either business expansion or business relocation to our area. It really is a skilled workforce, and it's not just numbers that you have workforce, but it's the skill shortage that we're dealing with. So a skilled workforce is really a top differentiator between one community and the next, and whether one should be there or one shouldn't be here. So let me ask this question. How do you think communities effectively prove this rather than just claiming it, that they've got a skilled workforce ready to work, willing to work? How do they prove it rather than just claim it?
It's a good question. Obviously, one of the first things is, like, let's say if we're in the process of attempting to recruit a company to San Angelo, using examples. And that's one of the things that we've done is, and it may seem risky, but we've actually put site selectors in touch with other companies in the region, in the city, and we'll tell them, call these companies here, and we'll of course let the company that we're talking about here in San Angelo know that we're gonna ask them to make a testimonial, and to speak smartly about what their experience has been, without attempting to bias the conversation. I mean, we've done that on a number of occasions where site selectors or vice presidents of companies that are very unfamiliar with San Angelo, we help them do their homework, but we do it very openly, very transparently, where we'll have them contact companies that we know and that we know are successful here, and have them find out for themselves from the companies, from peer groups, what has your experience been? You recall a good example of that is when we recruited SMC Global Chemical, which now has 3 locations in San Angelo, but they didn't know us at all, and so we arranged meetings with peer companies in the area. And we walked away. Remember that?
Yep.
We literally set them down in a room and we left. And we did not monitor or try to attempt to influence the conversation or colorize it in any way. We said, guys, you're peer-to-peer. You talk about what your experiences have been. And I think that that was the best way for in this case, a major chemical company, to understand what they were getting into and what is the skilled deliverable workforce actually like.
Yeah.
It's one thing to hear about it. Just like you said, it's one thing to hear about it, and it's one thing to talk to peer groups about what their experience has actually been. And I recall the after action on that. It wasn't a 100% glowing report. Had it been, SMC Global informed us later, they would have been very suspicious of that. They said, we get that there are challenges, and when the San Angelo companies, there were 3 of them at the same time, expressed the same exact challenges that they're having in other parts of the country, this is SMC Global, they felt confident that they were getting a very good assessment of what our deliverable workforce and trainability of our workforce is. And it worked out very well for them.
Well, that allows them to properly scale, right, and not bite off more than they could chew.
Well, it informed SMC Global, as an example, what are the things they need to train these people to do? Not just, here's our safety culture, but what are the skill sets? And there were a lot of skill sets they didn't have to train on.
Sure.
Because they were bringing people in from the petroleum industry out in the Permian.
Yeah.
Who were very familiar with the movement of chemicals and the safety protocols associated with transportation thereof. So that was something that they hadn't experienced in other parts of the country, which actually served to be a benefit to this particular company as an example.
Yeah. So in terms of proving it, right, not just talking about it, but I think there's some investments that have to happen. And there's investments, when you're talking about talent, it's not just in education, but it's also potentially in housing. But I got 2 examples, and one I'm going to kind of focus on, but I've got another one that I want you to kind of speak to in terms of proving that you've got talent and that you value the talent that you have, and you value recruiting talent that you need. One of those investments and one of those ways in which we are able to prove it is by setting up SME Prime here in San Angelo at San Angelo ISD.
Yeah.
And so SME Prime basically was, when I was still working at Ethicon, I was engaged with the Society of Manufacturing Engineers for some internal training curriculum development on our industrial maintenance side of the house. And I became aware of their education foundation within Society of Manufacturing Engineers. And they had this program that was called PRIME, which stands for Partnership Response in Manufacturing Education. And at that point, you and I were working together in the establishing the San Angelo Regional Manufacturers Alliance, and I kind of got the research and connected with SME about what Prime is. And basically, what Prime is it builds engineering and manufacturing centers of excellences within an ISD's CTE or Career Technical Education curriculum to create pathways that directly feed talent into your local manufacturers. Mm-hmm. And the way they do that is they come in and along with the help of the community, they find donor companies. So donor companies that will fund the project. Those donor companies then inform on the skill sets that their business needs. SME comes in and they, within state standards, they build the curriculum with the money that the companies donated. They build the engineering and manufacturing curriculum pathways. They use that money to then buy all the equipment that's going to be needed to train not just the students, but also train the instructors to be able to certify the students when they leave. And now these donor companies, as well as any other company in the area, has a direct pipeline coming straight out of high school of students trained in areas that directly benefit those particular companies. We were unique in San Angelo in the sense that we kind of broke the mold with SME, as they told us. I came to you and we talked about it, and you thought it was a great idea. From the Chamber of Commerce side of the house, we went to the Development Corporation and presented the idea to them. They loved the idea as a way for them to invest some of their dollars into that program. And I was able to get Ethicon on board. And then we were also able to I actually presented. I remember I presented at one of our SARMA meetings. And when I was done presenting what the program was, immediately Principal Sloan raised a hand and said, "We want to participate."
We're in. I remember that.
So we funded, and what was unique about our community is we funded a $320,000 project with private industry,
Private donations,
nonprofit, Chamber of Commerce, and the city through the Development Corporation. The entire program took 3 years to build, but now SISD ended up they service 2 high schools, becoming only the second SME Prime designated high school in all of the state of Texas. We beat all the big boys to the program. We beat the Houstons and the Dallases and everything.
And I'm glad you're talking about this in this forum, because that was a huge win.
Yeah.
And a lot of people wouldn't know about it. I mean, I know that it's a very industry specific program focused on training and educating and inspiring young people, high school age people, to explore diving into industry as a career, a lifelong career. But that project has made such an impact, a positive impact on students' lives, on the ability for the creation of careers that these students become absolute experts in, and wealth building for their families. But where we're also going with this is when we talk about the fact that we have only the second of 2 prime high schools in Texas, that gets industry's attention.
Yes, it does. Yes, it does.
On many levels. I mean, and it's been very interesting that little program, when we reveal it to the companies, that whether they're chemical companies or steel companies or fabrication companies or aircraft part companies, and we meet with them and we talk about the SME Prime program. First of all, it's always nice because a lot of them are very familiar with or even members of the Society of Manufacturing Engineers. They're most usually members. they're intrigued that we're members and have been members for a long time, and that we engaged in the Prime program. That, number one, shows the community's investment in something that is very specific to their industry and very dear to them.
There you go.
Most communities that most industrial operators would go to, most community managers have no idea what the Prime program. It's a very deep, very specific program, and membership organization. It's very, very granular. But I would imagine very few economic developers have even heard of the Society of Manufacturing Engineers. And so once you have that credibility established, and they see that we have a Prime program at SAISD,
that in and of itself becomes an incentive.
Automatic sales point.
Yeah. Yeah. So the other one, right? The other way you invest, if talent really is a new currency, if that's the number one thing that matters from, if a business is going to make a decision on where to go, they're going to first look at, do you have the talent to staff my business? The next investment that I think is important for folks to know from an economic development perspective is the recent SAISD bond election that we just went through. So you were extremely heavily, and we both were, but you more so than even me. Talk about, from an economic development standpoint, why the approval of the ISD bond election was so important, not just for our schools, but for us to be able to do our jobs.
Well, there's really two ways, and having sat on the Facilities Advisory Committee, which you and I both did, there's about 75 citizens from everywhere in the community. I mean, a total cross-section of the community. Was I thought it was a very smart way to put together that Facilities Advisory Committee. I mean, it wasn't just higher education insiders, right? It was everybody. And we had to and we were asked to have a very hard look at SAISD from a facilities perspective.
Right. Yeah.
And what was very surprising to us and to everybody else that was there was how SAISD has been punching way above its weight with regard to educating and inspiring young people.
Some of the oldest buildings in the state.
Yeah. Buildings that were unsafe, not just outdated, but actually unsafe. And we would walk through these buildings saying, how long has this been this way? And they'd say, since about 95 or so.
Yeah.
Unacceptable. Well, obviously that is not very inspiring for teachers and for students.
Or more importantly, their parents.
That's exactly right. But here's the other thing. When you have a series of campuses throughout your community that are that old and in that much of a state of disrepair, that sends a very bad message to industry, both industry that is here with aspirations to expand or industry that is looking at San Angelo with aspirations of landing here to participate in the wealth creation of the San Angelo area. And it was unacceptable to have the schools, so many of them, in such a terrible state of repair. And it was embarrassing, and it was not appropriate that here we are on the vanguard of software developers, data centers, steel manufacturers, companies that make parts for aircraft and automobiles that are here, that have been here, that very few people really know about, but they're here and they love being here. Having a school system that was basically being ignored and just told, deal with it, that was not acceptable. And I recall that when that bond was being discussed, the concept of it, you and I knew this, and we obviously weren't allowed to publish this or talk about it in any way publicly, but there were two companies that we were in negotiations with. One has landed, one we're still working with, that specifically told us,
yep,
we are watching how the community reacts to this bond proposition. The decision that the community makes will directly influence our decision whether we're a go or a no-go on coming to San Angelo.
There you go.
That was intimidating.
Proof in the pudding that
And we
location
told them
depends upon
that's not our
talent.
fault. We have no control over it. And they in a very nice way said, yes, but that tells us a lot about your community. And I remember the one example that the one gent, who you probably know who I'm talking about, said, do you keep your house clean? And if you do, the approval of this bond will prove that. If the community isn't interested in supporting their schools and making the sacrifice and doing it to support itself and show up for itself, that was the term he used, show up for itself.
Yeah.
We probably aren't going to be here.
Well, if you're not willing to invest in yourself, your community, why would some outside business?
Why would an outside company even want to come here?
Exactly.
I mean, there could be some examples. A mining company that they're just here to take the oil, take the aggregate, take the water, whatever it is that they have their eyes on. They don't care about the community necessarily because they're not worried about it.
Yeah.
Because they're here for the natural resource. That's one of the nice things about San Angelo, and that I've really enjoyed being here as the economic developer along with you, is that so many of the companies that we work with have such an interest in reinvesting in the community and contributing to that higher education and high school level feedback loop. That's why getting the funding for SME Prime, you recall that was $300,000. You don't just pick up the phone and make it happen. How long did it take to raise that money? A couple weeks?
Yeah. I mean, well, it was multiple conversations. It was bringing here's the interesting thing. It was bringing the lead of SME Education Foundation down to give a presentation.
That's right. They came in from Dearborn, Michigan.
And it was right as COVID was kicking off. So not only did we do it and bring all these entities together and convince them to give us the seed money, but we did it when seemingly the world was falling apart right as COVID was kicking off.
Yeah, industry was going into
Did it anyway.
in a complete freeze mode. That's right. And I love the way the SME Education Foundation team members, it was very comforting talking to them as we were on the precipice of what would turn out to be a several-year pandemic that industry and communities had to deal with. The confidence that they had was awesome.
Yeah.
I mean, it was awesome, Mike.
We kept moving forward.
We represent heavy industry. Nothing's going to stop us.
We didn't hunker down. We kept moving forward.
Man, they were awesome to work with.
Yeah.
Super confident, absolutely supremely confident in their capabilities. But the support that they got from the business community in San Angelo, that was a force multiplier. And now we have an SME Prime lab at Howard College that is under the command of SAISD. Awesome program.
And so we spend so much time, again, I think it's important that we spend this much time talking on talent and how we prove that we have a ready, skilled workforce, and that the investments that we have made and how important they are as part of our overall playbook of how we do what we do. So it's necessary to spend that much time on it, because if you miss that, you're missing a lot of opportunity.